Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. A DHS agent fired during an immigration operation in Willowbrook, California, after officials said a suspect rammed law enforcement with a vehicle. Authorities arrested the man, and no bystanders were hit. A federal judge ordered prosecutors to stop reviewing devices seized from Washington Post reporter Hannah Natanson during a leak investigation. The court set an early February hearing as the newspaper seeks the items returned. DHS launched Operation Catch of the Day in Maine, targeting immigration arrests in cities with large African refugee communities. Officials said about 50 people were detained as the crackdown expands beyond Minnesota. The House Oversight Committee voted to hold Bill and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress after they skipped depositions in his Jeffrey Epstein probe. The resolutions now head toward a full House vote. House Republicans voted 214-208 to overturn Biden-era restrictions on mineral development on federal land in Minnesota. Only one Democrat, Representative Jared Golden, joined the GOP as the measure heads to the Senate. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said he opposes a Homeland Security funding bill, but won't pressure members to vote no. The move could give ICE a funding boost even as Democrats criticize raids. Supreme Court justices signaled they may block President Trump's attempt to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Several warned it could undermine central bank independence and rattle markets. A whistleblower complaint says ICE is training agents to enter homes and make arrests without a judge-signed warrant, relying on internal paperwork. Civil liberties groups warn the policy could trigger major legal fights. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. Students at several Las Vegas high schools walked out after flyers called for anti-ICE protests across the city. Police said one student was struck by a car during a march and was expected to be okay. The Trump administration dropped its appeal of a court ruling that blocked efforts to penalize schools over diversity and inclusion programs. The decision leaves limits in place on using federal funds to pressure districts. Former NFL sideline reporter Michelle Tafoya entered Minnesota's U.S. Senate race as a Republican for an open seat. She's campaigning on crime, immigration enforcement, and cutting government spending. A federal judge in Manhattan rejected lawmakers' request to appoint an independent monitor to oversee the release of Jeffrey Epstein case files. He said they lack standing in the criminal case, but could pursue a separate lawsuit. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said European allies boosted defense spending in response to President Trump's pressure and warned the trend must continue. He urged members to meet higher targets as tensions grow over Greenland. A New York judge ordered the state to redraw Rep. Nicole Malliotakis' congressional district in Brooklyn and Staten Island before the 2026 midterms. The court said the current map unlawfully dilutes Black and Latino voting power. The U.S. Army ordered additional military police to prepare for a possible deployment to Minneapolis as immigration enforcement protests continue. Defense officials said troops would move only if federal authorities request support. ICE detained a 5-year-old boy and his father in a Minneapolis area driveway as the child returned home from school, local officials said. They were transported to a Texas detention center as attorneys challenged the arrest. Here's what happened across the U.S. in the past hour, all in 60 seconds. Flyers sparked anti-ICE walkouts at several Las Vegas high schools, drawing students into street protests. Police said one student was hit by a car during a march and was expected to be okay. House Republicans voted 208 to overturn Biden-era mining restrictions on federal land in Minnesota. Only one Democrat, Representative Jared Golden, joined the GOP, and the measure now heads to the Senate. The Trump administration dropped its appeal of a ruling that blocked threats to cut school funding over DEI programs. The decision leaves the court order in place and halts the Education Department's push for now. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Europe has boosted defense spending in response to pressure from President Trump. He urged allies to keep raising budgets as tensions grow over Greenland and tariffs. A federal appeals court paused a lower court order that restricted ICE tactics against peaceful protesters in Minneapolis. The stay allows agents to use arrests and crowd control measures while the legal fight continues. Governor Gavin Newsom said the Trump administration blocked him from speaking at USA House during the World Economic Forum in Davos. His office called it political interference, intensifying his public feud with President Trump. A federal judge temporarily blocked prosecutors from reviewing devices seized from Washington Post reporter Hannah Natanson during a leak investigation. The court set an early February hearing as the newspaper seeks the items returned. DHS launched Operation Catch of the Day in Maine, targeting immigration arrests in cities with sizable refugee communities. Officials said dozens were detained as local advocates warned the crackdown is spreading beyond Minnesota. Former NFL sideline reporter Michelle Tafoya entered the Minnesota Republican primary for U.S. Senate. She's running on crime and immigration enforcement, aiming to replace retiring Senator Tina Smith. ICE detained a 5-year-old boy and his father outside their Minnesota home as they returned from school, local officials said. The family was flown to a Texas detention center while attorneys challenged the arrest.